Happy Thursday, women's basketball fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked on Women's Basketball. And this episode of Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get a tasty, affordable meal. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. And I tell you who else is creating community and is always there is Dawn Staley. And that's what's coming up on this episode of Locked on Women's Basketball.
You are Locked on Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Locked on Women's Basketball. I am your two-time-a-week host, Erica Lindsay Ayala. We thank you for making Locked on Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. I am excited. I am proud. I am overwhelmed to bring you today's episode. In 2020, during the Wubble season, a group of Black women wrote a love letter to the WNBPA. And I got a chance to speak with Dawn Staley and also Dr. Janetta Cole. And when I spoke to Dawn Staley, and for those who are longtime listeners of Locked on Women's Basketball, you will remember this episode more than likely. Before we closed out talking about this love letter to the WNBPA, hashtag the WNBA is so important, hashtag Ari Chambers is so important. Before I got off of the Zoom call with Dawn Staley, I asked her this. Also, it was really interesting for me to look back at some of my early Zoom days and backgrounds. The background now versus what you're going to see night and day. That's a little bit besides the point, but here is the last question that I asked Dawn Staley, and I left the timestamp on there because one, it just shows how raw I was to video, but also it's a timestamp, and so I can pull receipts on how long I've been asking Dawn Staley about this. Here we go. And a part of your story, especially to the national championship with South Carolina, that has always just fascinated and intrigued me was that relationship that you built with Carolyn Peck leading up to that. And that, you know, Coach Peck offered you said you talked about pouring in, and she poured into you. And I'm curious, now that you've won that championship, I know that you've cut a piece of that net. Have you been able to find some other women, Black women coaches that you hope to, you know, share your piece of the net with until they get their first championship?
I haven't. What I have done is I've implored Carolyn to help me find that next person, because she saw something in me as a coach and our team, obviously, that when you're going through it, you don't really see it. You all, you know, as a coach, you always try to poke holes in the, you know, you have a good team, you just try to find, you know, what is the very thing or things that will deny us from winning the national championship. You can't really, you know, see it, but somebody that's on the outside looking in, and Carolyn saw that. It was her love letter to me, in the form of a piece of her net. So I need her to help me, because I'm still in it, identify who's that next person that we need to give this tangible thing to. She did say that your team is so good that you might need to keep it for a little bit.
I was just thinking.
And then postpone it to somebody else. But I am looking. I'm on the, you know, I got a watchful eye on who's that next person or who's that next Black coach that we feel can join that club of winning the national championship and become part of history.
I love that. We're going to hear more from Dawn Staley and from Dr. Janetta Cole. I'm actually going to reprise the love letter to Black women, the love letter to the WNBPA. It's one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done because of what it means. And Dawn Staley, not just taking the love letter to another level, but taking the now tradition of a Black woman who wins a national title sharing a piece of her net is beautiful. It's beautiful. So I want to take you to this story for Sports Illustrated. Wilton Jackson wrote it. Let me pull this up for you. I'm going to share the screen. And it's talking about Dawn Staley promising to share the net with all the D1 Black women head coaches. Now, when I spoke to her in October of 2020, she said what she said. But now, you have some people like Sean Hurd who've been following the story. But South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley guided her team to a commanding 66-57 victory against NC State on Tuesday. But winning games is not the only thing the legendary coach has been up to. To kick off the 2021 season, Staley kept her promise by sending each Black woman coach in Division I basketball a piece of the Gamecocks' 2017 NCAA championship net, carrying out a tradition that was started by the great Carolyn Peck in 2015. I love that. And I want to go, let's go to Sean Hurd's piece, or Sean Hurd on social media, because again, Sean Hurd is one of the people that has been kind of following this story. But on social media, Sean says, South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley wasn't joking when she said she was going to send a piece of her 2017 championship net to every Black coach in the country. Let me pull up the tweet for you. Every woman head coach in Division I received this net package before the start of the college basketball season. Some excerpts from the card that came with the net. This is a quote from Dawn Staley. Quote, I see all the time that I'm driven by being a dream merchant for my players, but after winning the national championship, I realized I could be one for every other Black woman who wants to lead her team to that mountaintop. After returning Carolyn's piece of the net to her, I struggled to pick just one other coach to give mine to keep the tradition alive. Hence the conversation that I had with Dawn Staley. I don't want to count Black women as national championship coaches one every few decades. I want us to do it so often we lose count. Looking at that net, the strings knotted together to form a crucial piece of equipment in our game, I realized that's what we as Black women head coaches are, a crucial part of our game, all at different intersections along our journey to a national championship. So I pick all of you to receive this piece of our 2017 national championship net in the hope that making our goal tangible will inspire you as it did me to keep pushing forward and us all to keep supporting each other in our journeys. I couldn't even get through that. I'm very emotional. It's been a blessing of my career to talk to Black women about Black women in coaching, because there's an understanding. I've never coached before. I'm certainly not in an elite level, but And Dr. Cole is going to talk about it on the show. There is just an understanding that comes with being a Black woman. And sometimes we wish we didn't understand each other and that we didn't have a common language, but we do. And to take that now and to utilize it for good, the way that Dawn Staley is doing, I love it. I, for my own personal brand and in my personal life, have things that the story of the netting has inspired me to do and to continue doing. And to see it now amplified. Now I got to up my game, Dawn Staley. You know, I had some things in mind for Black Rosie and we still going to do them, but now you've upped the ante. And the beautiful thing about this is not just what Dawn Staley wrote there on in her social media message, but I'll be honest. I'm following these threads. I'm following the posts. So you see teams recording their head coach opening the package. I'm learning about some of these head coaches for the very first time, and that's on me. But it's also indicative of everything that I say all the time. More is not more for everyone. I'm just so proud. I am so overwhelmed. So we're going to keep this party started. We're going to keep this party going, excuse me. I'm going to take you back to the conversation with Janetta Cole, because I think that Dr. Cole and Dawn Staley, their words sit and resonate to this day, even though it was over a year ago now that we spoke. And I was talking about a love letter. That was what it was titled, A Love Letter to Black Women, a love letter to the WNBPA. And there were people at the time that didn't understand that love letter, that didn't appreciate that love letter. And I'm just really glad that I captured this conversation with Dr. Cole. And then you'll hear from Dawn Staley later on in the episode. But the fact that Dawn Staley, in being a dream merchant, in being giving, in being supportive, in being a true sisterhood, in lifting while she climbs, that she is also creating a media sensation where from Bethune Cookman to Delaware to Elon, my alma mater, where Charlotte Smith coaches, although I haven't seen a video, but I mean, she's a D1 head coach. Black women are being seen. So miss me with, there aren't women who want to be head coaches, and that's why there aren't women coaches. Miss me with, there aren't enough Black women head coaches with experience. Miss me with all of that. And I can't imagine it wasn't intentional with how she decided to deliver this and how the message has been shared. But if Dawn ain't gonna say it, if them coaches ain't gonna say it, I'm gonna say it. Auntie gonna say it. This is a visibility. This is critical for visibility, not for us. Although, again, I done learned today about some coaches that I didn't have on my radar. Not for us, but for y'all. For y'all. For y'all. Coming up next on Locked On Women's Basketball, again, you're going to hear from Dr. Janetta Cole. You'll also hear from Dawn Staley. And if you want to see some of the coaches that have posted video or anything on Twitter in particular about receiving their piece of Dawn Staley's net, check out the show notes. But right now, I want to tell you about BetOnline.ag. It's back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of basketball season. That means more props, more odds, more lines, and all of that more than ever before, but while still maintaining its status as the number one spot for basketball and football action this season. Now, if you head to the website, you can use your mobile device, your tablet, your desktop. And if you use promo code locked on when you make your first deposit, you will get a 50% welcome bonus. That's 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use promo code locked on. From basketball, football, of course, NHL, go listen to Locked On Kraken, boxing, USC, and even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm emotional. This is emotional for me in the most beautiful way. And I'm thankful for the love letter that brought me to Dr. Cole and brought me to this conversation you're about to hear and watch with Dawn Staley. And I'm even more thankful that Dawn Staley was able to continue to pay it forward with the net and with the love letter. Enjoy.
Can't really still in it identify who's that next person that we need to give this tangible thing to. She did say that your team is so good that you might need to keep it for a little bit.
I was just thinking.
And then postpone it to somebody else. But I am looking. I'm on the, I got a watchful eye on who's that next person or who's that next Black coach that we feel can join that club of winning the national championship and become part of history.
The extraordinary sisters of the WNBA really, in many ways, tell our story. They tell the story of Black women in this country that, as you and I know so well, didn't begin well. It began 401 years ago with enslavement. But these sisters tell the story, I like to say, and her story of double jeopardy. What it means to be victimized based on one's race and one's gender. And we see this so blatantly in terms of something like, I'm just gonna go there. What a player who is a professional basketball athlete receives compared to what a player who is a professional woman basketball player, why should she receive so substantially less? And that reflects not just what our sisters in the WNBA experience, that reflects what Black women experience. And then, of course, this era in which such vile disrespect has been spoken about Black women, including Sister Senator Kamala Harris. We know that that disrespect is also shown to our sisters who are on the court. And it is a disrespect shown to all of us. So again, my point is your point, that while we put these sisters with such athletic prowess way up there, we admire them. They are our sheroes. You know, we want to wear the numbers of their jerseys, but at the same time, they are right where all of the rest of us are.
I love that. And Dr. Cole, I think what we also see and hear, because the WNBA has decided to really ramp up their message, which has been consistent since 2016. A lot of the questions that athletes in activism get, or that their fan base quite honestly struggle with, is, well, what do we do with this information now? So, Dr. Cole, let's assume that there is a listener or someone who will read this article that is becoming intimately involved with a lot of these issues, perhaps for the first time in their life. What advice would you offer for someone who occupies that space, but really wants to make a change and to find their own way within the movement?
That's a terrific question, my sister. And you'll have to excuse me if I begin out of my experience as a professor, because I'm going there. I'm going there to say, why don't you, whoever you are, sister, brother, sibling of whatever hue, why not begin with informing yourself? You know, anything you want to know about now, you can go on the internet. You want to know how to build a doghouse? You know how to bake a sweet potato pie? Well, how about if you want to be informed about the ongoing struggle and triumphs of Black women, get informed, read, think, talk to other folk. And then secondly, I would say that anyone who wants to become more active in this struggle, you got to get in touch with your own courage. Your courage. You know, Dr. Maya Angelou once said, courage is the most important of all of the virtues or attributes. Without it, you can't practice anything else. And so if you are new to the struggle or want to intensify your engagement in the struggle, get in touch with your courage, because it means you're going to have to stand up and speak out. In those circumstances, when you hear racism and sexism being expressed, even if it's coming in a kind of coded and, well, a sugar-coated form, you've got to speak up. And then thirdly, we all know, as we say in this love letter to our sisters of the WNBA, quoting that African proverb, when spider webs unite, they can even tie up a lion. And so if you are preparing to be more involved in the struggle, find others who are already there. I'm not saying that we cannot do things as individuals, but look at our power when we come together. So those are just 3 obvious actions that anyone can take.
I love that. And that proverb was amazing. It reminds me of Teaching Tolerance did a fantastic article that I often give to my listeners and readers, and it was called Telling the Lion's Story. And the idea is that we hear the story from the perspective of the hunter. But if we hear the story from the lion's perspective, we hear it differently. And I love that as well, because I think it embodies what Black women in particular go through. And so again, Dr. Cole, thank you so much for your time. And thank you and the rest of the 100 plus women that have signed on for their support of the WNBA.
It is a true love letter because love requires expression. Stay well and safe, my sister.
You as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again so much. This was fantastic, and I'm eternally grateful for the WMBPA and David for connecting us.
A big virtual hug to you.
I've been
Coming up next on Locked On Women's Basketball, you just saw a little bit there, but we're going to hear from Dawn Staley about this love letter to Black women, a love letter to the WNBPA during the Wubble season. For those who don't remember, that was the season that the Social Justice Council, in partnership with the NBA, or the WNBA, the league, got started. This was the season that the WNBA decided, and the WNBPA decided, that when there was yet another shooting that happened, to pause basketball activities. The Washington Mystics taking the lead there. And now there is an ESPN documentary about that, The 144. So all of this conversation is coming on the heels of that. And it was truly, again, a joy and a delight and an honor. But bringing community together is what this episode is about. And that's why I want to tell you about McDonald's. McDonald's is more than just a place to get some delicious fries. Like, come on, y'all. The McDonald's fries, we all know. Like, I'm about to get some as soon as I finish recording. But it's a place where classmates, where comrades, where Black women in the struggle can meet up, knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi, endless supplies of French fries, and of course, McFlurries. Win or lose, it's the place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge. It's the place you always look forward to stopping at on a long road trip to rest your legs and fuel. Can attest, as I just moved down to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and connect. Did someone say Locked On Women's Basketball Watch Party? Might have to get on that. But either way, I'm loving this conversation. I'm loving the support, the community aspect of this love letter to Black women. And I'm loving it, McDonald's, that you are now a part of our Locked On podcast network. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. All right, we're going to end the episode with Dawn Staley. And I'm going a little long, but you shouldn't be surprised, especially on Social Justice Thursday. I'm content. I have been feeling a lack of support, a lack of understanding, and I know that there are things within my control and not within my control that are contributing to why I'm feeling that way. But I can honestly say, the people that have been 100% the most supportive of me have been Black women, editors, friends, colleagues, competitors. They have been able to see that I'm not where I want to be in a lot of places, and that's affected how I do my work. And they wrapped me in love. And so again, this love letter, being able to reprise this episode and seeing Dawn Staley pass along her net to all of the Black women coaching in Division I women's basketball, women's college basketball, warms my heart to measures that I don't even know I have the words for. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Thank you to the WNBPA, who I talked about last week. The WNBA is so important. And I know I was in that commercial and I love Ari Chambers, but this is what that means to me. This episode right here is what the WNBA is so important. That's what it means to me. So this is my love letter right back to you. So we'll close out the show hearing from Dawn Staley.
Attending the Zoom calls with the Win with Black Women, and I come away from each call just inspired. Just the camaraderie, the spirituality, the knowledge, the poise, the intellect, and obviously it's discussing some political changes that we want made across our country, and also pushing Kamala to the White House. And in those discussions, you have to look and see, well, who are leading some charges out there that are unpopular but right. And I think Dr. Janetta Cole is the one that so softly but so powerfully said that we needed to write a love letter to the WNBA players. And I know all of us, when she said it, was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant idea, because for the time that I've stepped away from the game and this kind of outside looking in, seeing the WNBA players voice what's on their hearts and be the voice of voiceless is quite incredible. And you can't wrap it up in one tweet. You can't wrap it up in one post on Instagram, but you can, however, show them through this love letter just how many people out there who fight the very fight that they fight find it really encouraging that they step out there and do that, knowing that there's going to be a whole lot of backlash, not just from, they get the backlash just from, they think, the WNBA is an inferior athlete than any other athlete on the face of this earth. And we know that's very untrue. But the way that they've united, there's not one person that broke the chain and wanting to get things accomplished and using their voices to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Dr. Cole. I actually had the honor and privilege of speaking with her earlier today, and what you said, quiet and just straightforward and powerful, absolutely came through in our conversation. And I'm so excited to have listeners hear that from such an accomplished woman. But I think also what you said, Coach Staley, that I resonated with, but I want to tease out a little bit more, is that yes, a love letter sounds so brilliant, but I do feel that anyone who doesn't have the honor of being a Black woman might not really understand why that is important. What would you say to them as to the underlying importance of something like this unified message?
Well, I think for me personally, I can just look at the strong figure that my mother was and still is in my life. Unfortunately, she has since passed away. 3 years ago. And if I just reflect on her life, and if anybody can reflect on their mother's life, they'll see the strength of a Black woman. They'll see the struggle of a Black woman. They'll see a Black woman struggle, but not really let you let on. Like I didn't know my mother struggled when we were growing up in the housing projects in North Philly, because she never felt sorry for herself. She never blamed others. She just took what the world gave her and gave back strength. I mean, my mother cleaned houses. My mother went to church, was a faithful woman. My mother had the strength of 10 women. And when you say having the strength of 10 women, that's very, very powerful. So for young people that, may think that this is just a letter, for publicity, or a letter that is coming out for a calculating reason. There's no other reason besides, and it shouldn't be, but besides just loving up on somebody else that has probably felt like they're in a struggle, not on the court, but part of that is on the court too, because, women aren't paid, what men are paid. So that's a struggle when they think about it. But what we can control, we can't always control how much we get paid. We can control our hearts and our voices to make sure that it may not happen for us in our time, but it's going to happen for somebody else younger than us in their time. So we hope it changes, while we are taking breaths every day. But if it doesn't change in our time, we know that at some point, the pendulum's going to swing our way. So we have to continue being very consistent and persistent in raising up, our young ladies, because, they are our future. Whether we want to believe that or not, they are. Those young women, and the WNBA is getting much younger. So we want to raise them up. We want to put our arms around them and let them know that their victory is our victory, and we want to make sure that we make them feel that.
What gives you just hope and satisfaction, not just as someone who's coached them, but also as someone who is a pioneer in the WNBA?
Those women are incredibly strong, and they are from different eras as far as our age difference. Nneka knows the in and outs of the league by being the president. Laysia Clarendon has been outspoken on a lot of issues that impact women, personally for her, and as well as, throughout and sharing her story. Asia Wilson, I've had the distinct pleasure of getting to know her from, 7th grade on to where she is the league's MVP. And I'm so proud of her growth. I'm so proud of her ability to be unafraid of speaking out. And all these women are unafraid and unapologetic in doing so, because they understand what's at stake. They understand that, not only do they have people who look like them, have family members that look like the people who are being abused to the point of death and being paralyzed, and the young people that are seeing it, their children are seeing a cycle of just mentally breaking a family down, and that just doesn't go away. This stays with people, for a lifetime. And if Laysia, if Nneka, if Asia, and the rest of the WNBA women, if they understand that and realize that, which they do, they're utilizing their voices, and they're taking, people are taking hits at them. People are, on social media, and understand this, you mess with them, you're going to have to mess with, all of these women that you see on this love letter. And then more, because, we're not going to stand down anymore. We're not, this is time for change. If it's not going to happen now, I don't think it's ever going to happen, because you don't know the history. We're gaining more and more history about, what this country has done. And until we're able to allow that history to be heard and to be known throughout our country, which I think it is, we're making moves, we're having these uncomfortable conversations. Now is the time. And I pray that every activist out there, I pray for their stamina, because that's what you're going to need. I pray for, an incredible armor to deflect some of this. And I just pray that no harm is done to them because of what they're doing for the greater good of everyone.
Yes, amen to that. You mentioned stamina and armor. Dr. Cole mentioned courage. And I think both of those fall into a message that you quite consistently now for several years have really been offering to the women's basketball world in particular, but of course through sports in general. And that is to kind of step into that zone of discomfort. That was something that obviously in the Netflix series that was a part of your playbook. And I think that discomfort is difficult, especially for those who perhaps have enjoyed the intersect of multiple types of privilege. I'll put it that way. And again, Black women, we don't necessarily benefit from multiple intersects of privilege, but there is still, for anyone, ways that you really have to step out of that comfort zone. I wanted to ask you, Coach, for you, what was that process like for you, and what are the ways in which you try to impart to any young person, just kind of sitting in that discomfort and helping them through that process?
As someone that, I've lived probably more than half my life right now, if I really think about it. So I'm at a place and time in which I can reflect and understand where my growth took place and how it took place and why it took place, and have a really good understanding of that. And I just don't think people in general really understand it, because they focus more on just being uncomfortable than focusing on how to get through. And I've been fortunate enough to understand the whole process of growth. I've grown, over the 50 years that I've been on this earth. And for more than half of that, I'll probably say 70% of that, I've been in a position to help young people, to be a dream merchant for young people. And in doing that, you have to instill that process into them. And once they get it, because once I got it, it didn't feel so much uncomfortable as it could have been, because I know that if I can pass this life test, which makes me uncomfortable, I can move on. I passed it. Let's bring on the next challenge of life. So I just think that, making people uncomfortable by by talking about Black Lives Matter, the growth isn't, it's a little bit harder for people to digest, because it seems very simple. I marvel at the fact that people say all lives matter. I marvel, that is very, very simple statement to say. And all lives do matter. They do. But this is when you're seeing what we're seeing, when you see people die at the hands of police brutality at an incredible rate. And for us to have to visualize that, see it, there's no imagination into it. It is, it is as live as a basketball game you're watching on TV. Like, you're seeing it real time and very often. So when we want to carve out just a little bit of space to say our lives matter, Black lives matter, because of what we're seeing and the impact that it has on our community, the kids in our community. You look at Jacob Blake's kids. What are they thinking at this moment? What were they thinking when they saw their father get shot right in front of their eyes? Now he's paralyzed, so he gets out of the hospital. When he does, they're going to see that. They have to live with that. They have to replay that over and over and over again. Yes, Black Lives Matter. We're not just talking about the ones that their lives that have been taken or impacted. We're talking about the lasting mental impact it has on our community. And people fail to realize that that's what the whole totality of it. It's not just someone losing their life, which is too much, but the entire impact that it has on our Black community. And any smart person can really understand why we are saying that. We're not saying, disowning other lives. We're not saying that at all, but we're saying that this is what's happening to us. If you want to choose that fight, but we're fighting for, preventing the next one, because it just peels off the scar and the scab that we walk around with in our everyday life.
Wow. Again, I am just thankful. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you to the Black women head coaches, including at my alma mater, head coach Charlotte Smith. Thank you to my mini tribe. Thank you to the Black women who got me into hockey, which even got me into being a sports journalist, which include my sister, Blake Bolden, Black Girl Hockey Club, and on and on and on. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This love letter means so much to me. It means so much to be able to report on it. And it has empowered me and inspired me to every day find a way to send Black women and Black non-binary people in this space in particular. It inspires me every day to send you love. And so I hope that you feel that, and I will work every day to make sure that you do. But that's all she wrote for Locked On Women's Basketball. I want to let you know about Locked On Bets, which is, of course, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. We want you to listen to that after you make, of course, Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. And thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for those of you who got through this entire episode, because this is a love letter to all of you, but to myself as well. And it feels good. And I'm leaning in and stepping into that in its totality. So thank you. I will catch you next week on Locked On Women's Basketball. Peace.